Hello, and welcome back to another episode. It's happening. Tomorrow night, we're off to see Ghostbusters Afterlife at the cinema. I can scarcely contain my excitement, not least because it's been just over 2 years since I was last in a cinema. Blimey, it was 2019 Terminator Dark Fate in October. Wow, it has been a while. So going to be ending that drought. That's one exciting thing. And then the other thing, of course, is the fact that they get to end that drought with Ghostbusters Afterlife, a continuation of the story from Ghostbusters 1 and 2 that picks up those threads and continues. Well, I suppose a story that was in development hell for all of my conscious life, actually. Dan Aykroyd kept on dropping little hints and crumbs here and there, and I guess we did get a sort of Ghostbusters 3 in the computer game that I first played on Xbox 360. In that, we had the original cast come back and lend their voices to the project, and it did pull on ideas from Ghostbusters 2, expand on them with the rookie, for example, joining the team, but also with the interdimensional stuff, the ability in a game to actually transport into another dimension that Dan and Harold Ramis originally wrote into the first script for the first movie, but they just didn't have the money to pull that off. And also, they needed to ground it, and where else could you ground it other than the tri-state area and busting ghosts in New York? The joke of that first movie was that these scientists were somewhere in between, eccentric scientists, some sort of pest control, like squashing bugs in a flat or something, and also a grifter or grifters, like you have Dana Barrett in her flat say to Peter Venkman, "You're more like a game show host than a scientist." That was the thing. That world is the one that we wanted to see continue in cinematic form, and it looks like Jason Reitman, Ivan Reitman's son, the son of the original director, who he's also producing. Actually, Ivan Reitman is producing this movie. Are picking up that thread, that familial thread, in a way that's actually honouring and putting in centre stage the fact that we no longer have Harold Ramis with us. In that first trailer, which was absolutely excellent, it really highlighted that Harold, or rather Egon, went on to become a slightly eccentric scientist that may be held up in a farm somewhere in the middle of nowhere, researching the next problem. Maybe he detected the psychic waves, as big as a Twinkie or not, coming from the mine just down the road, and was preparing for something. And his absence is the lens through which the next generation gets to pick up the proton packs and bust ghosts. Obviously, with the original cast returning in some form, that was hinted at in the most recent trailer. But also, we are there with them. It's been 30-40 years since that first movie. New cinema goers get to experience this. We get to experience it once more. And I'm just so excited. I'm so incredibly excited. I mean, in that trailer we had, for example, things like symmetrical book stacking. No human could stack books like that. We get to see Egon's collection of mold, spores, and fungus.
Do you have any hobbies?
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
But crucially, we get something fresh and new as well, with this new perspective on the Ghostbusters story and that slightly strange but also hilarious, slightly spooky world. It's going to be great. I can scarcely contain myself or form coherent sentences, so I'm going to put that to one side for a moment and instead share with you, I suppose, what I knew of Ghostbusters long before I saw any of the movies, because my and my brother's first exposure to Ghostbusters was actually through the Real Ghostbusters, and I've talked about this in a previous video, in particular the PKE meter there from the animated series, and the so-called Real Ghostbusters were a sort of a shade different from their movie counterparts. Peter Venkman was much more of a clown. Ray Stantz was much more of a you know, I don't know, a butterball kind of character. But it was actually part of a whole genre at the time in the late 80s of kids getting a sense of what's in a film through the merchandising, but not necessarily understanding how the film isn't necessarily for them. For example, Alien is one that I have toys for still. The Mantis alien over on the desk there. There's a flying queen up there without her wings. But these are toys that I played with, along with Ripley on her power loader, absorbing the look of the film and the monsters and the scenarios without understanding that they weren't necessarily for me. The franchising for these films, in terms of toys and other paraphernalia, was so powerful that kids got to experience these films almost as a pure concept, you know, by osmosis, as it were, without actually having to see the movie. Star Wars is another example for me, at least. I didn't see the first Star Wars movie until it was released in the cinema again in 1997. The special edition version I saw for the first time there in the cinema, which is really kind of cool. I cherish the fact that I got to experience that flyover of the Star Destroyer in a dark cinema, and it was with the booming sound and everything. But I knew already what the Millennium Falcon was and who some of these characters were and what a lightsaber was because of the marketing, because of the toys, because of the stuff that surrounded the movie. And with that in mind, I recently actually picked up from Facebook Marketplace this selection of the Real Ghostbusters Annuals from 1988 through to 1991, and in one of these the team goes to Stonehenge actually and faces off against Gozer's cousin of all things, the big bad obviously from the first movie. Its cousin is at Stonehenge, along with a rock festival, of course. So I got these recently, but these weren't with me as a kid. This is just the sort of stuff that I would have definitely read as a kid, and they're fantastic. But rather, it was through things like this guy here, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man toy, who is as old as I am. Actually, on his foot it says copyright 1984 Columbia Pictures, and it's almost actually in a handwritten font, as though the artist wrote that into the foot before it was moulded and then cast as this rubber toy. And this shape, this form, this character was so familiar to me because I played with him all the time, but I didn't know exactly what it was. I didn't know exactly how. I didn't know he was the size of a building, for example, in the movie. And actually, I grew up thinking that literally you could get Stay Puft marshmallows in the supermarket, and I spent lots of my childhood looking for them. Alas, they were nowhere to be found. So I was absorbing almost the icons, I suppose, of these things, and I think as so many of us were. Here we have Frankenstein, Frankenstein's monster, of course, as he appears in, again, the Real Ghostbusters in the animated show. But my favourite thing about this guy is when you squeeze his feet together, his arms raise up, his mouth opens, and I love it. I still love it, and I loved getting to sneak up behind Egon and Venkman, the two members of the team that I had, and scare them. And again, the scenario was nothing like the film. Nothing. And how could it be? I had no idea where these things, where these things were coming from, and what was inspiring the cartoon. But nonetheless, I was absorbing them. Now, Frankenstein's monster is kind of okay, a bit scary, but this lady here really scared me as a kid. She looks a bit like the Queen, maybe like a grandma. But when you pull her hat up, and then you can sort of wiggle her tongue. That's kind of it's fantastic. It's just really inventive. It gives you a little sense of almost like safe horror, I suppose. and it invites you into that sort of horror comedy world that is Ghostbusters. But it was primarily actually before I saw the film, probably on VHS, I guess maybe when I was 10, so in and around 1994. It might even have been on the TV actually, that I was actually reading the story in the novelization, the book by Larry Milne, that seemingly is based probably on a version of the script. It was released in 1984 to coincide with the movie. This is the first edition actually, of the book. That has things that are similar but also different to the film in it, and it's interesting reading therefore, and I thought I'd share a little bit of it with you today. In the middle of the book there is a series of stills from the film and also from behind the scenes that again they're really dark. They're actually quite shadowy and murky and scary to look at, and so again that horror comedy balance, the horror aspect was really important, and again I didn't know exactly what I was looking at. All I knew was that I'd seen these images and that the story in the film was probably something like this book. But to give you an example of the differences, this is a subtly different version of a scene from the film, or scenes from the film. But at 19%, Stantz is distraught. You didn't even bargain with the guy. Spengler presses a button and checks the readout on the illuminated display of his calculator. Just for your information, Ray, the interest payments alone for the first 5 years come to $94,000. Stantz groans. Will you guys relax? Vanksman says, throwing up his hands. He thumps his palm with a fist. We are on the threshold of establishing the indispensable defense science of the next decade: paranormal investigations and eliminations. He strides confidently along, dodging dawdling pedestrians. The franchise rights alone will make us rich and wealthy beyond our wildest dreams. But most people are afraid to even report these things, Stantz points out. Maybe, Bankman grins. He's given some thought to that as well. But no one ever advertised before. Before they can advertise, however, there's the problem of finding premises in the heart of New York City. 2 days later, after calling a half a dozen real estate agents, Venkman comes up with what he thinks is the perfect location: a square, 4-story abandoned fire station built around the turn of the century. The plump young lady in the Century 21 blazer shows them around. The frontage of the dingy street is none too appealing, with its faded red paint and a legend in a chipped gilt letters that reads Engine Company number 93. Inside the wide double doors, a white tile garage bay extends back to a repair shop. Still in place is the shiny brass pole disappearing through a hole in the ceiling to the fireman's quarters on the floor above. Venkman crinkles his nose at the foisty smell of disuse. He wants the place. It feels right. But he doesn't want the woman in the blazer to know it. He listens with feigned indifference as she rhymes off the old fire hall's appointments. Besides this, you've got another substantial work area on the next floor, office space, sleeping quarters, shower on the floor above that, and you have your full kitchen on the top level. It's a 10,000 foot square building in total. Spengler comes through the partitioned office at the back, fingers busy with his computer. Actually, it's 9,643.55 square feet. He corrects her, pushing the glasses up on his nose more firmly. The plump young lady moves her gum to the other side of her mouth. What is he, your accountant or something? With a frown. This might do, Venkman says hesitantly, as if racked by doubt. I don't know, it just seems kind of pricey, don't you think? We're trying to keep our costs down, he explains, favouring her with his most charming smile. You know how it is when you're starting a new company. Sure, I know. What are you calling a business? Venkman glances at Spengler and turns to the young lady. Ghostbusters, they say. If he's expecting a reaction, he doesn't get it. She swaps her gum and says blandly, Oh, well, this place is perfect for it, I guess. Venkman signals with his eyebrows to Spengler. At this rate, they're going to have to pay top dollar. Spengler comes to the rescue. Miss, have you taken into account this building's grave defects? He says with a funereal voice, and begins to list them. Beams, structure, faulty wiring, substandard floors, that are subsiding, dry rot in the wood, plumbing that's disconnected. Venkman nods happily. That's more like it. Whee! Yells Stantz, making his appearance through the hole in the ceiling and sliding down the brass pole to land at Venkman's feet. A big childlike grin pasted from ear to ear. This place is great! Just what we need! When do we move in? This pole still works, he says, wrapping himself around it. Venkman rolls his eyes and reaches for his checkbook, drawing blood from his lower lip. And so it's subtly different. There's details in the dialogue. There's, for example, the fact I think in the movie, Ray says, we should stay here tonight, just to test it out. Like, I think, so you get a sense that maybe in the filming there was a little bit of improv and additional dialogue was put in. But this was the version of the story that I was most familiar with as a kid. And I love it. I loved the story in the book. I loved the movie when I first saw it. I love Ghostbusters. And I can scarcely believe that we're going to get to see a continuation to that story tomorrow night in a cinema. It's astonishing. It's just amazing, and as I say, I can barely contain myself. Hopefully, this has been interesting. I see this sort of as an extension of that video about Christmas 1989. So maybe watch that and watch this as well. Obviously, I'll link below, and there'll have been a card on screen for you. But crucially, I think even if the film isn't quite what I hope it is, it's just going to be a joy seeing it in a room, in the dark, that's designed for the movie experience. And actually, we're going to see not just any old version, we're actually going to see the IMAX showing. We thought we'd push the boat out, seeing as this is our first time in the cinema in more than 2 years. Oh, man. I'll let you know how it goes. Obviously I'll post almost certainly something on the Discord server, so do join the Discord if you're interested. And there we have it. Oh, also, this arrived in the post today. It's a Lego set, which I'm very excited about, and it's blooming huge. I didn't realise he was sending it in its original box. It's the School from the Hidden Side series that you can't really get anymore in the shops, and I got it for a steal of a price. I'm looking forward to building that at the weekend. So lots of things are happening, and tomorrow we're going to go and see Ghostbusters after I go to the dentist tomorrow morning. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Until next time, do take care. Bye bye.